Project managers, have you ever felt like you should get that promotion or a better job? Start a business. Write that book. Have you ever felt you were made for more but didn't know where to start?
Welcome to the PM for the Masses podcast with your host, Caesar Abaid.
Learn from the experts. Think outside the box. Have a voice, network, and be extraordinary.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome once again to the Project Management for the Masses podcast. This is your regular reminder that your career matters more than your job and that your life is a project and you are the manager. Whether you work for a company or for yourself, your job stability is really just your ability to land your next gig. So join me in practicing intentional, planned, and value-adding relevance, starting right now. Today we're going to talk about how not to get distracted, which is something I need. And to talk about that, I have here with me today Mr. Nir Eyal. He has lectured at Stanford's Grade School of Business and Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design. His first book, Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products, is an international bestseller. Eyal writes, consults, and teaches about the intersection of psychology, technology, and business. His writings have been featured in the Harvard Business Review, TechCrunch, Time, The Week, Inc., and Psychology Today. Nir Eyal was talking to me from somewhere in a bunker in Singapore.
Or hotel.
Or hotel. So good morning for me, good afternoon for you, I guess, or evening.
Yeah, good evening. It's 7:30 p.m. I guess it's 7:30 a.m. where you are.
That's right.
You're on
yeah, that works out when it's 12 hours apart, so it's easy.
Yeah.
Great. So I first heard of you at Automatic's Grand Meetup last year. So for those who don't know, like my company is 100% distributed. I talk about that a lot here. And once a year, at least up until last year, we did this once a year big company Grand Meetup, we call it. So we bring all the company together for a week and it's like a big company conference. And we will have keynote speakers come in and that's how I learned about you and got your book and read it and spoke to my heart. So,
good.
Yeah,
good. Thank you. Kind words. That means a lot to me. That's music to an author's ears. You know, we spend so much time writing a book that it's great to hear that it really benefits someone. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here today. So let's talk about that then. What is a distraction? What is it that what happens to us as human beings with brains that take us away from what we want to do?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. In fact, it's an age-old question that we know that the philosopher Plato talked about this very same problem, which is really surprising to a lot of people. A lot of people, they like to blame technology on their distraction, on getting distracted, right? They blame Facebook and the iPhone and the internet or whatever. And it turns out that humans have been struggling with this problem of distraction since time immemorial. This is really not a new problem. And in fact, Plato called this tendency that we all have to do things against our better interest. He called this akrasia. And akrasia is this mystery, if you think about it. You know, why is it that despite knowing what to do, why don't we just do it? Right? If we know we're supposed to exercise, we know we're supposed to eat right, we know we're supposed to be fully present with the people we love in our life, if we know we're supposed to work on that hard project, why do we keep procrastinating? Why do we get distracted? And so for me, this was a very personal question I wanted to figure out in my own life. You know, I always struggle with distraction. And I really wondered, you know, why would that be? Especially in this day and age where we no longer have the excuse of not knowing what to do. You know, maybe in past generations, maybe as far back as maybe our parents or our grandparents' generation, you could say, well, I just don't know what to do, right? I don't know how to lose weight. I don't know how to excel at my job. I don't know how to have good relationships. Today, just Google it, right? What's your excuse? Everyone knows what to do. Who doesn't basically know how to lose weight or how to be better at your job? We pretty much know. But yet we don't do it. And so I think the problem that we have today is no longer the problem of a scarcity of information. I think our problem is a scarcity of attention. And so what I wanted to do for myself, more than for anybody else, I'm very glad the book benefits other people, but really for myself more than anyone, is to figure out how to become indistractable. Because I think This is really the skill of the century. This is the macro skill that helps us do everything and anything in our life better than before by helping us control our attention and choose our life.
Wow. Especially these days, it's been very difficult to focus and to do what I need to do. I've been comparing this to like having a process running in the background that's taking a lot of my RAM. All this talk about, the quarantine and this virus, even though, on a conscious level, I know it's going to be okay. And, we're going to make it. And my family's doing okay. I don't have anybody that's close to me who's sick. Everything's fine. I have a job, which is great right now. A lot of people don't. But there's that underlying anxiety there. And I think that's part of it. In your research, do you find anything related to that?
Absolutely. So what we call this phenomenon is an internal trigger.
Right.
And it turns out that if we're going to answer Plato's 2,500-year-old question of why do we get distracted, why do we do things against our better interest, we have to understand why we do anything. Why do we do every human behavior? And it turns out that the answer is not what most people believe. If you ask people, what's the nature of human motivation? Why do people do what they do? Most people will tell you that it's about carrots and sticks, right? That's how we motivate people to do things. We either provide them something that they find pleasurable or disincentivize them with something that they find uncomfortable, right? The pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. This is called Freud's pleasure principle. Unfortunately, it's not true. That neurologically speaking, we do not do things in the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. But in fact, what we now know is that everything we do for only one reason. And that reason is to avoid discomfort. Everything you do, believe it or not, everything you do is about a desire to escape discomfort. And in fact, if you think about this, common sense will tell us that physiologically, this is pretty obvious, right? Think about it in the context of what's going on in your body. If you feel cold, your body says, oh, that's not comfortable. Put on a coat. If you feel too hot, you go back inside. Now it's too hot. The body says, oh, take the coat off. If you feel hunger pangs, you're hungry. So that the brain says, oh, that doesn't feel good. You better eat. And if you eat too much, now you feel stuffed. The brain says, oh, you better stop eating. That doesn't feel good either. And so everything we do physiologically occurs because of this what we call the homeostatic response, the desire to escape discomfort. And it turns out that the same is true for psychological responses, not just physiological, but also psychological responses. So think for a moment, where do people go when they're feeling lonely? What app or website do we check? Facebook, of course. Mm-hmm. What do we do when we're feeling uncertain? We Google. What about when we're feeling bored? Oh my gosh, lots of things we can do when we're bored, right? We can watch Netflix, we can go to Reddit, we can go to Pinterest, we can, watch sports, the news, lots and lots of things can satisfy that discomfort of boredom. And so this is an incredibly important point to understand, because if all human behavior is prompted by a desire to escape discomfort, what that means, therefore, is that time management is pain management. Time management is pain management. This is an incredibly important point, especially to what you're asking around why is it that these days we feel like we're so easily distracted. Now with this COVID crisis, there is more of these internal triggers sparking us towards distraction throughout our day. We're more fearful, more uncertain. There's the world is suddenly become a much scarier place, and we are looking for escape. For many of us, the natural reaction is that we're looking for answers. Where do we go for answers? We check the news. We look at what's going on Twitter. We look for expert advice. And so that constant checking, there's nothing wrong with it. Before COVID, I used to tell people maybe we should all check less news when all people were checking was silly celebrity gossip and the latest political, firestorms that were happening. I think it was a good thing if we tuned in less. Today, we don't really have that luxury. It's imperative that we know what's going on so that we can keep ourselves and our families safe. But we have to ask ourselves why we are looking for these things. Are we using them to stay informed, or are we using them to satiate some kind of emotional itch? And when we understand that we're doing them for the wrong reasons, this is how we can begin to rein in distraction. This is the first step to becoming indistractable, is mastering the internal triggers. Because look, there's a very important distinction to understand what is distraction. If you think to yourself, what's the opposite of distraction? Most people will tell you it's focus, but I actually don't think it is. The opposite of distraction is not focus. The opposite of distraction, if you look at the origin of the word, the opposite of distraction is traction. That traction and distraction both have the same Latin root, trahare, which means to pull. And you'll notice both words end in the same 6 letters, A-C-T-I-O-N, that spells action. So traction is any action that pulls you towards what you want to do, things that you do with intent, things that help you be the kind of person you want to be and live according to your values. Those are acts of traction. The opposite of traction is distraction. Distraction is any action that pulls you away from what you plan to do. Anything that pulls you, any actions that take you away from being the kind of person you want to be and living out your values. So this is a really, really important distinction because, I think many people are very quick, to blame technologies. And I would argue that, look, a particular technology can be a distraction, but it can also be traction. If you want to read the news or watch Netflix or play a video game or, mess around on Facebook, there's nothing wrong with those things. I am not in the camp of people who tell you, digital detoxing and digital minimalism and technology is the enemy. That's a bunch of rubbish. It's so silly and it's so elitist to think that people can just stop using these tools. Many of us rely on these tools to make a living. So it's ridiculous for some professor who doesn't have a social media account to tell us to stop using Facebook. It's silly. Instead, what we need to do is to use these things responsibly and in such a way that we use them with intent rather than allowing these products to use us.
Wow. Okay. That's stunning. That's really, really interesting. With social media, like my a little speechless after this. This is really, really insightful. I was trying to think about myself because I find that I instead of focusing on the serious thing, I'm always like looking at can I make somebody laugh or can I laugh myself, right?
Sure.
That's an internal trigger as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it is. So everything we do is about this need to escape discomfort. So whether it's you're feeling bored, whether you're feeling lonely, whether you need a sense of connection, there's nothing wrong with that. This is why we do anything and everything. So it's perfectly natural. I think, one of the things that I don't like about the self-help industry these days is that we constantly get told that we're supposed to be happy all the time. That if we ever feel discomfort, that something's wrong with us. And that is not true. That feeling bad is not bad. It is part of our evolutionary heritage. Think about it logically, right? If there was ever a group of Homo sapiens who was happy all the time and contented with life, our ancestors would have killed and ate them. Because that's not a good evolutionary trait. You would not want a species to always be happy. Because what gets us to do things is dissatisfaction. It's this perpetual disquietude that keeps us hunting and striving and inventing and creating and reaching for the moon and overturning despots and creating life-saving medicine. It's because we are pissed off and we want to change things. So that's a good thing. The question is, do you allow this discomfort to lead you towards unhealthy distraction? Or do you use it as rocket fuel to lead you towards healthy traction? Because it can go either way. So the idea here is to not put down these sensations. It's not to tell yourself that you're somehow broken, you have a short attention span, you're lazy. Don't do that. It's not true. You're perfectly normal. It's natural to feel those internal triggers. The question is, how do you respond to them? One thing that most people don't understand is that your feelings are not in your control. Your urges, you do not choose to have an urge, okay? It's involuntary. Whatever that urge is, it's like the urge to sneeze. You can't affect the urge to sneeze. All you can do is to decide how you respond to that urge. And the same goes with your feelings, hence the word responsibility. So you can't control your feelings. You can't control your urges. You can't control the thoughts that might bounce around in your head. What you can do is to control what you do with those feelings and sensations. That's the important thing.
So let me take a minute to talk about my favorite remote collaborating tool. It's called MindMeister, and it's a mind mapping application. MindMeister is a completely web-based mind mapping software that runs in any standard web browser. So the mind maps you create are saved automatically in the cloud, online, and can be accessed from anywhere. If you don't know what a mind map is, think of it as a free-flowing visual outline tool that can be used for anything you want. So I've been using MindMeister for 10 years now. It is by far my favorite tool for organizing my thoughts, for sharing my thoughts with my team, and also for collaborating with other people. So for example, it is a perfect tool for you to create a WBS, a work breakdown structure. It's beautifully laid out, it's all online, and it's a wonderful company. So aside from the web app, MindMeister also offers native mobile apps for iPhone, iPad, even Apple Watch and Android devices, which means that you can access, edit, and present your maps no matter where you are. MindMeister was made as intuitive and as fast as possible to ensure that you can fully concentrate on the creative task at hand. So there's no clutter, no friction, just your team and your ideas. And speaking of teams, unlike traditional mind mapping tools, MindMeister lets you brainstorm in real time with an unlimited number of users. So I do this all the time. I'll brainstorm something by myself using a mind map, and then I share that with my coworkers who are far away, and they hop in and they help me out with brainstorming and moving things around. It's really cool. And MindMeister has a special code that will give you a 10% discount for my audience. If you go to pmforthemasses.com/mindmap, pmforthemasses.com/mindmap, if you sign up for any of the paid accounts, you can put in the code MASSES, as in PM for the Masses, so MASSES, and you'll get 10% off. And you don't even need to upgrade to a paid plan because MindMeister offers a free plan that it's a bit limited, but you can try it out. And then if you like it and you want to upgrade, you can use that code. That's a great way for you to get started. And if you do upgrade, it's a great way to support this podcast. And also, you will let them know, the folks at MindMeister, that you heard about MindMeister here on the PM for the Masses podcast. So again, pmforthemasses.com/mindmap and enter the code MASSES for 10% off. Now back to the show. Oh, awesome. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now, you also talk in the book about external triggers, and then, so maybe can we talk about that a little bit, and then how can we master these triggers?
Sure. Yeah. So external triggers are kind of the usual suspects. The external triggers are the pings, the dings, the rings, the notifications, anything that can lead you towards traction or distraction by something that happens outside of you, something in your environment. And so there are many things that we can do to do what I call hack back the external triggers. And the reason I use the term hack back is because we know that these tools are trying to hack our attention. That to hack means to gain unauthorized access to something. Mm-hmm. And so it's a surprise to no one that every media company's goal is to gain access to your attention. Whether it's, of course, Facebook or the New York Times or CNN or Fox News or whoever, any media company is trying to get you to spend your time with that form of media. That's how they make money. They sell your eyeballs to advertisers. Does anybody not know this? Well, now the idea is that now that you know this, you're not powerless, that you can do something about it. How? You can hack back. That in fact, we are much more powerful than any of these external triggers if we think ahead. So the idea here is to take steps today so you don't get distracted tomorrow. And so I tell you systematically how to hack back. And frankly, the stuff I just mentioned, the news feed on Facebook, the social media accounts, your phone buzzing, that's easy. That's kindergarten stuff. You don't need to buy a book to tell you to turn off your notifications. Anybody can do that. Surprisingly, believe it or not, 2/3 of people with a smartphone never change their notification settings. I don't know what's up with that. That seems like the most basic, preschool thing to do. I don't know why everybody doesn't do that, but that's pretty obvious. But I wanted to go deeper into the book to identify and hack back the external triggers that maybe you don't think about it, are not as obvious. For example, email is a constant source of potential distraction. How do you hack back email? So I can tell you how to reduce the time you spend on email by up to 90%. How do you hack back meetings? Oh my God, how much of a distraction are most of the meetings we go to? Complete waste of time. Most meetings are nothing more than a way for the person who called the meeting to avoid doing the actual thinking and the work that's required. I'm telling you, this is what studies find, that the reason people call meetings tends to be to hear themselves think so that they don't have to do the actual work. And so I tell you how to stop that, how to make sure that you can work in a culture that people don't waste your time in fruitless meetings. How do you hack back group chat? Many of us now working from home, we have our meetings in Slack channels. Well, that can be an incredibly distracting medium. So I tell you how to hack back group chat as well. So there's all kinds of ways that we can hack back these external triggers. One of the external triggers that we struggle with more than usual today, as many of us work from home, you and me are both dads. And so we find that sometimes our kids can be a source of distraction. Not that there's no ill intent, but they also want your attention. They also want to gain unauthorized access to your attention when you're not ready to give it to them, right? So you're working on that big project, you're trying to concentrate, you're trying to stay focused, and your kid comes up and says, "Hey, Daddy, it's time to play." Well, it's wonderful. It's a very nice thing for your kid to want to play with you, but not right now. And so let me give you just one very actionable tip that I know many people are struggling with this. So here's what you do. If you work from home and you have kids and you find that they interrupt you frequently, what I want you to do is to look around your house and find the silliest hat you have. The silliest hat you have, right? So I have one. I wish I could show it to you here, but it's this like floppy looking silly hat that I have. It's probably 20 years old, and this we have dubbed the concentration crown. And whenever Daddy wears the concentration crown, that means that I'm not to be interrupted. Okay, I tell my daughter that I call this butterflies. Butterflies are the ideas in your head that if you are distracted, fly away. And so she knows that if Daddy's wearing the concentration crown, that's keeping the butterflies inside his head. And so she's not to interrupt me when she sees this silly hat. And the beauty of it is she can't ignore it. As soon as she sees me with the hat, she can see it from across the room. She knows what's up and she knows not to interrupt me. Because remember, if I don't wear the hat and I get mad at her for interrupting me, it's not her fault. She didn't know that I can't be interrupted. How could she have known? So that the concentration crown is a way to signal to her that I'm not to be interrupted. And thus I have hacked back the external trigger of being distracted by my daughter.
That is a great idea. Yeah. I have a big, enormous cowboy hat. I think I'm going to use that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now make sure to take it off when you're doing a Zoom call for work, okay?
Right. Awesome. Yeah. And the other thing too is you can go the other way, like, because we all have different priorities in life, and sometimes they compete with each other. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to ask you about safeguarding time and time boxing. But one thing that I find as well, sometimes it is time to play with the kids, but I feel like I'm distracted by work. I'm distracted by the thing that I couldn't focus on earlier, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a really, really good point. And I'm really glad you brought it up, because what we find is that many people today, even when they have leisure time, they don't enjoy it because their attention is elsewhere. They're thinking, oh, I should be doing that big project right now. I should be, I should finish up my email. I should be, I wonder if work needs me. And even when they set aside the time to say, I just want to hang out with my child, I just want to watch Netflix, I just want to, read the news in peace, their head is elsewhere. And so what the hell is the point of leisure time if you don't even enjoy it? And let me tell you the big culprit of why this happens. You'll never believe who's at fault. The to-do list. The to-do list is probably one of the worst pieces of productivity advice that was ever advised. And even though we all know that to get things done, you got to keep to-do lists, I don't think people appreciate how toxic these to-do lists can be. I call it the tyranny of the to-do list. Here's why. Let me ask you a question here, okay? I want you to answer honestly if you can.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time? Wait, do you use a to-do list? Let me ask you.
I do GTD, so it's like a bunch of lists. Yes.
Yeah. So you use to-do lists. Let me ask you something. When was the last time, and I'm taking a risk by asking you this question, when was the last time you didn't finish every single thing on your to-do list for that day?
Yesterday.
So how great is GTD if you didn't even get the things done?
Right.
So this is why it doesn't work, because what happens is if every day that you don't finish, and I'm guessing yesterday wasn't the only day, right?
No, it's every day. Yeah.
It's every day. Okay. I didn't want to call you out. Exactly. By the way, this is what I hear time and time again.
Yeah.
And when I use GTD, that's exactly what happened to me. I also didn't finish everything on my to-do list. So why is this so toxic? What's the big deal? Here's why it's so toxic. Because behavior change is identity change. Behavior change is identity change. And how is not finishing everything on your to-do list changing your identity? Well, every day that goes by and you didn't do what you said you're going to do, you are reinforcing your identity as someone who doesn't finish what they say they're going to do. You are not reliable. Another day went by and you didn't do what you said you promised yourself you would do. And so it seems like no big deal. But I'm telling you, and I used to do this too. You're not guilty here. I was in the exact same boat. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, I was reinforcing this identity of someone who's not reliable and doesn't finish what they say they're going to finish. And that takes a toll until one day you realize that it's okay. No big deal. And that's when you lose the battle of distraction. You've lost it. Instead of keeping a to-do list, which if you think about it, a to-do list is nothing more than a register of output, okay? A register of output. All output needs input, right? Of course it does. If you were to go to a baker and say, hey, I need you to bake me 100 loaves of bread, the baker would say, no problem. Where's the flour? Where's the salt? Where's the yeast? Where's the sugar? I need the ingredients of the input in order to make the output. But somehow with knowledge work, we somehow think that we can do output without input. If the output is all the things on your to-do list, what's the input? Two things, time and attention. That's it. But if you don't know where that time and attention will come from, those things will not get done, which is why one of the techniques that I recommend in the book is keeping a time-boxed calendar. A time-boxed calendar, the goal of a time-boxed calendar is to not finish anything. Did you hear what I said? Don't finish anything. That's not the goal. Now, how does that make any sense? How am I going to finish all that stuff I got to finish? Here's the thing. The goal of a to-do list is to finish things, right? Do this, do that, do this. The reason it doesn't work is that study after study show that human beings are horrible at predicting how long something will take them to finish. We are really, really bad at it. And so we don't estimate correctly. And so this happens. We get in this trap where we don't finish things. We don't get things done. Instead of keeping a to-do list, what we do instead is that we use a time box calendar and we assess our progress by one thing and one thing only. Did we do what we said we were going to do for as long as we said we were going to do it? That's it. Your only measure of success is, did you work without distraction on whatever it is you said you would do for as long as you said you would? Working on that RFP, finishing that wireframe, being with your kids. Did you do it without distraction? That's it. And if you do, you are reinforcing your identity with every single time box, whether it's 30 minutes of doing that activity, 45, an hour, 2 hours, doesn't matter. Every time that happens, whether you finish the task or not, doesn't matter. It only matters, did you do what you said you were going to do? And hour by hour, day by day, you're reinforcing that identity that you live with personal integrity and you are indistractable. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the funny part. People who use this technique, people who use time boxing, are more effective, more productive, and get things done better and faster than the people who keep the to-do lists. They actually do finish more by not keeping the to-do list and instead keeping a time box calendar. So to-do lists are fine if they're temporary, right? If you just need a place to write down the ideas and then they immediately go into your calendar, no problem. What most people do is they only keep the to-do list with no sense of the input to make the output.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And just, for those listening right now, just think how much you can get done between 4 and 5 p.m. on a Friday, right? When you know you have to finish these things because it's the end of the week. And imagine that level of concentration and indistractability all the time, right? Then I agree with you. You don't need the to-do list. All you need is the name of your projects. And then if you can put in the time and the concentration and the dedication, when you're supposed to, you will finish them. You don't need to check a box.
Yeah, that's right. And it's impossible to hold yourself to that standard of, I will finish this task when I absolutely, today, when you're not planning the input. It's just a wish list. It's not realistic because you have no idea how much input it takes to make the output. So instead, don't keep track of the output per se. What you want to do is to keep track of the input. And there's a lot more to this. I'm simplifying it because we're running out of time, but there's a lot more to that technique as well. But it's not a technique I made up, actually. It's something that is way underutilized and turns out to be something that has been studied in thousands of peer-reviewed journal studies have shown this is an incredibly effective technique. This isn't something I just made up off a whim. I show you exactly how to implement it. In fact, I'll give you a link for the show notes. There's a website I built for this to make it really easy for people to start making a time box calendar. It's totally free. You don't have to sign up for anything. You don't even have to give me your email. It's at nirandfar.com/schedule-maker. Again, it's nirandfar.com/schedule-maker. That's where this time boxing tool lives so that you can use that right away.
Awesome. Great. Wow. That's a lot here. You still had more questions here, using pacts and all that. And this is all in the book. And I really recommend everybody go and check out the book. Here, this is amazing. This is really, really, you should, I don't know if you have your own podcast, but you should.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much to talk about. There's really these 4 fundamental strategies to becoming indistractable. And I just want to give you a tip of the iceberg and just some practical tips. But it's really imperative that people use these 4 big strategies of mastering internal triggers, making time for traction, hacking back external triggers, and then as you hinted at, preventing distraction with pacts. When you use these 4 techniques in concert, and it could be that you're using some of this or part of it already, but it's really about marrying these 4 techniques together, using them in concert. This is how we become indistractable. And again, everything in the book, not only is it something that I use in my own life and have for years now since embarking on this line of research, but it's all backed with peer-reviewed studies. I hate these self-help books or these productivity books that say, oh, I do this and it totally works, so you should too. No, that's not good enough for me. I want to see the journal studies. Show me the evidence. Mm-hmm. And so there's 30 pages of citations citing hundreds of studies that back up my claims.
Fantastic. All right. And I'll have links to the things that we talked about here in today's show notes, which you can find at pmforthemasses.com/128 for episode 128. And Nir, if people want to learn more about you and what you do, where should they go?
Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah. So my blog is nirandfar.com. Nir is spelled like my first name. That's NIR and far.com. And if you're interested in the book, it's called Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. And just want to give you a special offer here for your listeners. If you end up getting the book, whether you buy the audiobook on Audible or the paperback or the Kindle edition, doesn't matter. If you buy it on Amazon or if you buy it from your local bookseller, which I hope you will, keep the order number. Okay, keep the order number no matter where you buy it, and then go to Indistractable.com. There's a complimentary video course that you can get if you get the book and enter in your order number. That's available at Indistractable. It's spelled I-N, the word distract, A-B-L-E.com, Indistractable.com.
Oh, awesome. That's amazing. I'll put a link to that as well. And so go buy your book and save the receipt and the order number so you can take advantage of this offer. That's amazing. Nir, thank you so much for your time. I know it's a difficult time right now and you're far away, and I appreciate you taking the time and talking to us here today. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Cesar. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
Tune in next week for more great ideas on how to manage your projects better and truly stand out in your industry.
PMforthemasses.com